Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Dimensions with D. I'm your host, Danny, and on this episode, I'll be doing part three of my The Mask miniseries that I've been doing, where I'm going to be going over my theory for it's doing theater. So when I first stepped into the role of the character Kurt Kelly in the Heathers musical, I didn't really think it was going to affect me the way it did, because on paper, Kurt is loud, obnoxious, and often written off as just the jock character. But once I started really sitting and learning with him, once I had to justify his choices instead of judging him, I realized how much of this character is built on insecurity, performance, and the desperate need to be seen. And that's where things started to get personal with me being this character. Because I would say playing Kurt forced me to ask uncomfortable questions about masculinity, validation, and how easily confidence can become a mask. Not just for him, but for people in general. For men especially, I would say. And honestly, for me, at certain points in my life, I would say still going on till this day. One of the biggest things I got from this experience was a deeper awareness of how insecurity shapes behavior. Kurt isn't cruel because he's strong, he's cruel because he's afraid of being irre- irrelevant, afraid of losing status, afraid of being laughed at instead of laughing first, and betraying that week after week, night after night. Sort of maybe start noticing how often people, myself included, perform confidence instead of actually feeling secure. It made me reflect on moments where I've spoken louder than necessary, joked instead of being honest, or tried to seem unbothered when I very much was. Kurt taught me that security doesn't always look like silence. Sometimes it's the loudest person in the room. This role also challenged my understanding of masculinity, because you see, Kurt operates under a very narrow definition of what it means to be a man: dominant, sexually aggressive, emotionally closed off, and always in control. Portraying him made me realize how exhausting that performance actually is. What hit me the hardest was recognizing how much of that script is inherited and not chosen, I would say. Kurt isn't evil as well. To me, I would say Kurt isn't evil. He's more or less unexamined. And that forced me to reflect on the ways masculinity is modeled, rewarded, and reinforced without anyone ever stopping to ask if it's healthy. Through this role, I started separating strength from value and confidence from entitlement and masculinity from emotional absence. And that's something I'll carry with me long after the show, well, the lights dimmed. Another huge takeaway was learning how to take up space without abusing it. Kurt is someone who dominates rooms, whether it's physically, verbally, or socially. Playing him required me to be bold, loud, fully committed. There was no room for shrieking or half energy. But the real lesson came in learning when to step back. On stage, I had to learn how to be big without overshadowing my fellow castmates. Well, yeah. I guess I'll say that. Yeah, how to hit comedic beats within an ensemble rather than be above it all. Oh, and by the way, because since it was a musical, I performed songs, and so the songs that I did were "Ed," "Do Me a Favor," "You Shine," and "A Night We'll Never Forget." And I'll say my favorite is "A Tie Between Anne and A Night We'll Never Forget." I'll say I'm leaning more towards Anne. I would say though, but in doing all of that, it translated directly into real life. Well, my personal life, I would say, into the conversations, relationships, leadership spaces, and creative collaborations that I did, or yeah, I did, or did in the past. Kurt doesn't think he's doing anything wrong, you see, but that's part of what makes him dangerous. And portraying someone who lacks accountability made me more conscious of my own responsibility, not just for my intentions, but for my impact. This role taught me that being a good person isn't enough if your actions harm others. That awareness made me more thoughtful in how I speak, how I joke, how I move through shared spaces. Accountability stopped feeling like punishment and started to feel like maturity. And I would say that's thinking about it right now. That's something I've kind of carried with me to this day. As I feel like, especially I'll say throughout my entirety of college, but I feel like especially during these last few months, I feel like I can't truly be myself because like I feel like if I'm myself, I feel like everything I say and do is like can be or like because it has I would say for the most part has been used against me. So it's like how can I how can I exist by like but still be myself? That's kind of the puzzle I'm still trying to solve. I would say. But one of the most surprising things about this experience was how much empathy it gave me. Kurt isn't really an easy character to sympathize with, but being forced to understand him more humanize people I might otherwise have written off. Especially this one person I had interactions with during my freshman year. Well, yeah, I was mostly during my first semester, but I would say first year as a whole. Yeah, I started seeing how ignorance can be an armor, how entitlement can mask fear, how cruelty can come from confusion rather than malice. That doesn't excuse behavior, but it deepens the understanding of it. And that kind of empathy has changed how I look at people in real life, especially those who are difficult, defensive, and emotionally undeveloped. Um, I think the first thing that came to mind was thinking back on that was just people who have ghosted me because that's something. I mean, that's something that's been kind of frequent. I would say, yeah. But learning how to separate myself from a character like Kurt was incredibly important. I had to explore darkness, immaturity, and ignorance without internalizing it. That boundary of being able to step into flawed roles without carrying them home was one of the most valuable skills I gained. It reinforced the idea that I'm not defined by the worst traits I portray, or even the worst moments I've lived. Through it all, I learned that growth is about awareness, not perfection. But at the end of the process and my time portraying the character, I found myself more emotionally grounded, more reflective, more intentional. Portraying Kurt didn't harden me, it softened me in the right ways, in all the right ways, I would say. It made me more aware of emotional nuance, social dynamics, and the responsibility that comes with being seen and heard. I didn't walk away feeling superior to the character. I walked away feeling clear about who I want to be more as a person. Ultimately, portraying Kurt Kelly from the Heathers musical taught me who I don't want to become and gave me the tools to choose differently, strengthening my confidence while humbling my perspective, sharpening my presence while deepening my empathy, challenged me to redefine masculinity on my own terms. For me, playing Kurt Kelly from the Heathers musical wasn't just a role; it was more of a mirror for me, and I will be forever grateful for what it showed me portraying that character. And with that, that concludes this week's episode of Dimensions 15. I would say on the next for preview of the next week's episode, I will go over the next part of my facade miniseries. This that may be the final part, depending on how much I get through with that. And so, yeah, and so in the next time I'll talk about my next next character I portrayed in the musical in theater will be in next season. So it's season three. So I'm excited to um, dive deeper because I have um, two more theater experiences left, including the next including the fourth part. So yeah, I'm excited to wrap that up. But yeah, this has been this is your host, Danny, and I will see you on the next episode.